Reached the end of our family law and domestic issues unit. Needless to say, some pretty heavy duty controversial stuff. But I hope you feel some practical, important things. So if you missed some classes or you missed the review, these are the 9 questions we're going to pay the piper with. And question number 1 comes from our very first day. And if you recall that Mr. or Mrs. Wright drill where there were 25 items on a sheet and you had to pick 7, and it was a bit of a trick drill, it was the top 7. Now, I'm not saying it's 100%. We live in a country with a very high divorce rate, but statistically speaking, if you can do these 7 things, you're less likely to get divorced. And I would not wish divorce upon my worst enemy. That is safe to say. Number 1, wait 6 months to 2 years before getting married. Wait till you're 23 or older. Have enough money to support a family. Here's the thing. You get married, you're not exactly sure when the kid shows up. I hope you have the dough to support that kid. Emotionally mature. Doesn't have to do with chronological maturity. People mature at different rates. Somebody who's an actual adult, not a glorified adolescent. Now, number 5 is tough because it's beyond our control, but if you have a partner who comes from a happy childhood with happily married parents, that is their normal, and it's easier to be married to somebody like that. So you can overcome number 5, but it's an obstacle, as I said. Number 6, these big 4: home, children, romantic love, and religion. Home. Do I live in a big house, small house, apartment, condo? Do I keep my house really tidy? Is my house a mess? Children. How many kids do you want? I want 9. I want 0. That's going to be a problem. Romantic love, that's a euphemism, but you can get that. Better be on the same page with, I know you can't see me, but quote unquote romantic love, how it's expressed and that sort of thing. And religion. Being on the same page with those 4 things will help. And here's a real easy one. Be faithful. If you commit, commit. Don't cheat. Want to ruin your marriage? Cheat. Pretty simple. So if you can do those 7 things, hopefully you can beat the odds. And question 2 was the case of Loving versus Virginia. And the question is, describe the history of the case, explain why it was culturally significant. Now, this story here, their last name were the Lovings, and you can see it was a white man and a black woman. They got married in Washington, D.C., and decided to move to Virginia. When they moved to Virginia, they were no longer legally married. In fact, they could get in legal trouble for being married. So it set the wheels in motion. The case eventually reaches the Supreme Court, and it was a 9-0 decision based on the 14th Amendment that we have a right as Americans to marry whomever we want as long as it's age appropriate. Now, the cultural significance, in 1967, 3% of married couples were interracial. By 2015, the number moved to 17. So obviously that changed the culture. Now, a case that we argued in class is the same sort of thinking or not the same kind of thinking is the case of Obergefell versus Hodges of 2015. Similar to Loving versus Virginia, that the precedent that was set is that same-sex people can marry. It was the culmination of lower court cases in several states, including our own, Michigan. Now, in terms of its cultural significance, you could make the argument this was the culmination of the gay rights movement that began with Stonewall in 1970, and this was the victory. Now, the man here, that is James Obergefell, the man behind the case. Now, this one's a little bit different. Where Loving was 9-0, Obergefell Hodges was 5-4. It's a lot more controversial, and some people claimed it was a false equivalence between Obergefell and Loving. Other people said it was the same, thus the debate. Okay? Now, question number 4, some key statistics regarding domestic abuse. Now, I have the link here from the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. The reason I'm not putting this in this PowerPoint, I want you to check it out yourself and just see what stats grab you. And I hope I made my point. This is a major problem, not a minor problem, a major problem. And I hope none of you ever wind up in this cycle. This is a cycle of abuse. And let's start with tension. You're not getting along, you're angry at each other, things are building, it's irritability and saying nasty things to each other, and then unfortunately it goes to the explosion where it's ugly, the violence, the terrible stuff. Now, afterwards, usually it's the man, not always, but most of the time it's the man. They come back and claim, I'm going to change, I'm going to get myself clean, I'll never do it again, forgive me, here's some chocolates, here's some flowers, here's some candy. I'll be good. And for a while they are. And the person takes them back and say, oh, they've changed. Oh, I remember. It's like we first started dating. And things are good for a while. That's the honeymoon stage. But then things get ugly again. And it's tension. And you can see once you're in the cycle. So how can you get out of this? Well, first of all, if you have communication skills or some coping mechanisms in the marriage to prevent the tension from getting to that explosion, that's fine. However, if it reaches that explosion part, it's very unlikely that's ever going to change. Okay, so be aware of this, that after some horrible thing, just flowers and candy doesn't undo the horrible things. Get out of the cycle. Okay. Now, question 5 in divorce, what's the difference between community and separate property? The main reasons that people divorce. Well, separate on a simple level, it's assets acquired before the marriage. If I bought a car before I even met the woman, that would probably be separate. Community, you go to Gardner White and you buy some couches together, that's community. Now, it sounds really simple, but in real life, it's not. So, for example, one person's the primary breadwinner, one person is not. Pets, okay, a dog, okay, it's a community property. What do you do with that? The judge, do you liquidate assets and give the people the money? Do you have this deal where you work it out? I'll take this, you take that. So on paper, it's quite simple. In real life, it can be quite divorced. Now, the reasons that people do divorce: lack of commitment, sexual incompatibility, infidelity, lack of communication. It is so important to have a good communication with your spouse. Abandonment, alcohol addiction, substance abuse, all these other forms of abuse, lack of conflict resolutions, very different visions and goals, different expectations in household tasks and handling the money, people who are intellectually incompatible or inflexible thinkers, people with mental instability, mental illness, and then religious, cultural, and lifestyle differences. So unfortunately, a lot of divorce happens in this country, but now that you're young and you're not married yet, you can kind of use this as a checklist with your future partner. Be like, okay, good, 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 or not good. Maybe time to find somebody else. Okay, now question 6, what are the two sides in the birth control debate? What is your opinion? Provide me evidence. So there's this debate about abstinence versus teaching sexuality. There are some people who believe there's only one lesson: do not have sex until marriage. Now, other people say, no, we need to talk about that. Now, here's where it gets dicey. Where do you draw the line? Could it be those very sterile charts where you're pointing at things like, oh, look, it's a fallopian tube? That's pretty innocuous, but some people want to really go into great detail about sexuality. And some people say that's the domain of the household, not the teacher. But then some people say some kids aren't taught in the household. Somebody's got to teach them what should be contained in the curriculum. Now, do the schools have a role in preventing sexually transmitted diseases and unwanted pregnancies? Weird thought. What if the school offered contraception to the students? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? What level of government should be responsible for making these decisions? Local school boards, the states, the federal level? Heavy, heavy questions. This one's more of the realm of opinion, and, it's kind of you thinking for yourself. That's the big thing. Okay, now question 7, what precedent was set in Roe versus Wade? How does it relate to the constitutional principle of federalism? Argue the merits of the debate through the following. The precedent was set that all 50 states, a woman could choose to have an abortion. Now, in terms of the principle of federalism, that shift that happened short time ago, it did shift from the federal level to the state level. There's nothing in the Constitution about abortion. Therefore, it fits into the 10th Amendment of federalism. Now, right now, Republicans tend to favor the state level. Democrats tend to favor the federal level. That's what I'm talking about, federalism. Now, in terms of the lenses, logic, if I take emotion out, you could say things like this: pure logic, no ethics here, or anything like that. Well, there's 8 billion people in the world. We don't need 8 billion in one. If I have a child and I'm already in poverty, I will be in more poverty. So a logical argument probably is more of a pro-choice. Now, utilitarianism, what's good for the whole, that could go either way. That's one's a tough one. Now, a moral religious argument is probably pro-life. Thou shalt not kill in the 10 Commandments. Pretty simple, okay? So the economic, you could say, well, here's the thing. We have a lot of deficiencies in the workforce. We could use some babies to fill that in, or we have too many people already. More babies are going to make it worse. So that one can go either way, and political is fairly simple. The Republican Party, by and large, is a pro-life party, and the Democratic Party, by and large, is a pro-choice party. It's a huge political divide. So I just wanted you to riff off that Roe versus Wade lesson we did a couple weeks ago. And question 8, how can you identify a person who's high risk for suicide? What are the 4 questions that can save a life? How does suicide affect various demographics differently? That came from our lesson from the Grief Recovery of Saginaw, the experts on this. And the main risk factors: substance abuse, breakup of the family, clinical depression, feeling insecure, physical illness, mental illness, broken love affairs. People are in a really bad spot if they're going through a bad breakup, and being poor. So these things combined. Now, the 4 questions suggested are validating their feelings, not dismissing it. Are you honestly considering taking your life? Confront them, have them talk about it. What is going on? Not like, hey, what's going on? Like, what is going on? Tell me what's up. Now, try to identify where it hurts the most. And this is the big question. What can I do to help? I love you. I care about you. I want to help you. And sometimes that can make the difference. Now, in terms of demographics, I don't have time here, but revisit that PowerPoint. I'm talking about men and women, young and old, American Indians, the Black community, Hispanic community, the white community, the gay community. Quite different. Even geographic regions of the country is different. So break that down for that last part. And question 9, what is the crime of stalking? What forms of stalking exist? What legal protections does one have to prevent stalking? Stalker is a fairly new term. It was coined in the 80s. California had the first anti-stalking laws in 1990, not ancient history. 2 types of stalking. The one that makes the media, celebrity stalking. It's relatively rare, but it's good for TMZ and whatnot. The most common one is prior relationship stalking. Usually it's man against woman, not woman to man, but it does happen. Now, unfortunately, very few stalking charges are charged, okay? Most victims are just jealous and ex-husbands, ex-boyfriends, and sometimes people with mental illness can do that. Now, in terms of how you can protect yourself, report it. Report it to somebody. I'm not saying you have to go to the umpteenth degree here, but tell somebody what's going on. Keep the evidence, screenshot, keep whatever evidence is there. Get a restraining order. That will legally protect you from that person coming by. Sometimes you have to go to extreme measures. You have to change your phone number. You have to change your lock. Even extreme cases, when you are feeling it's a really credible threat, you might have to change a lot. You have to even move, change your locks, change your routine, that kind of thing. Get some people to protect you to feel safe. Okay, so that is it. Okay, so these are the 9 questions. Ran a little long. If you have any, you need more detailed questions, either email me or check out Google Classroom because there's details of all 9. So good luck on the test, and I appreciate you watching.